you say 3 months?
Oh,
Hmm?
thanks, Rose.
What? What is this? So why do you say 3 months? Is that the length of a session, of a legislative session?
Say it again.
Is the 3 months time frame the length of a legislative session?
Yes, that's what it's supposed to be. It never works that way, never.
Okay.
But ever, but that's the intention.
Okay.
They're usually more in session for about 6 months
Wow.
than 3. It usually takes them 2 months just to do the budget.
Right.
I'm
That's what
thinking the office of the treasury that collects taxes from people, maybe a public office, although I don't know that that would be for profit. But I would say, I don't know, that a treasurer may not be also a member of the legislature.
Are they where it says provided that appointments in the state militia, et cetera, are those?
So those people in that section, they're saying that those people can be in the legislature. They can be like Rosemary's a notary. Okay, she could run for office, still be a notary and be in the legislature.
Okay.
A justice of the peace can also be in the legislature, apparently. I don't know how that works because that's an elected position.
Yeah.
A United States commissioner or postmaster is a position that somebody could hold and still be in the legislature. So I am not finding out where, because I was going to look this up before and then I got busy and I didn't do it. And I don't know how somebody could be in a public office of profit. Well, so for instance, if you're part of the, if you're a part of a utility company, it's a public company. If it's run by a city, I mean, some utility companies are run by a city. And they might be in that, some part of that utility company for profit, they're making a profit. Maybe that's what they're talking about. I will have to do some more research on this because I don't know the answer.
Well, it's also interesting that they list postmaster of the 4th class.
Yeah.
If you're a postmaster of any other class, then I guess you don't fit.
Certainly not.
What is the 4th class?
I don't know. It
Got no
sounds like
idea.
somebody down the totem pole, right?
Someone without authority. I think this is really referring to conflict of interest. There could clearly be a conflict of interest if you're making money or in an office that is for profit and you would make legislation that would benefit that office.
Right. And so you're right. If nothing else, we can interpret this as something that there's not going to be a conflict of interest.
When I put in what is a public office for profit, it came up with the U.S. Department of Interiors.
Interesting.
And then other things were underneath that. So like, endorsement.
So like forest rangers and that kind of thing, they're in a
because
public office and they're getting paid.
Well, either that or maybe that they would influence in other ways to vote in certain ways to get things that they want to get passed. It could be things
Interesting.
in that point of view.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder about their Speaker of the House.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Especially ours.
Yes, it's the Pelosi section.
Right.
Yep. Okay. Well, let's go on to number 5. Who would like to read?
I will.
Okay, go right ahead.
Okay. Section 5,
ineligibility of members of legislature to other public offices. No member of the legislature during the term for which he shall have been elected or appointed shall be eligible to hold any other office or be otherwise employed by the state of Arizona or any county or incorporated city or town thereof. This prohibition shall not extend to the office of school trustee, nor to employment as a teacher or instructor in the public school system.
Okay. So if you're a school teacher, a school principal, a school superintendent, you can also run for office.
So I guess that's the reason why the school board can then too.
I guess.
But the school board, like we have situations where we have school board members that are also in the city council.
Yeah.
But that's not legislature. This is referring to legislature only.
Right, right.
State legislature.
Yes. So they can't hold another office, as in another elected office, because that would be probably creating a conflict of interest. So that's reasonably clear, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's also clear, I mean, we've had a couple of people who are high school teachers who have been in the legislature, and I don't know how they managed to do this. I don't know how they figure it out with the school district, but so they're in the legislature, not in the school classroom for half the school year. And then they go back and be a teacher the other half of the school year. I don't know how they figure that out, but anyway, they do. Because there's been a couple of them in there. All right. Other than that, it's pretty clear cut, right?
Yes.
Okay, doke. Let's go on. Now it gets a little bit more interesting. Who would like to read 6?
I'll do it. Part 2, the legislature, section 6, privilege from arrest, civil process. Members of the legislature shall be privileged from arrest in all cases except treason, felony, and breach of the peace, and they shall not be subject to any civil process during the session of the legislature, nor for 15 days next before the commencement of each session.
Okay, so
That is ridiculous.
How do you interpret that?
well, what does it say?
It gives them cover.
That's
It sure
exactly what it
does.
is. So they can, if they have a DUI, nothing can happen with the DUI during the session of the legislature, nor for 15 days next before the commencement of each session.
Well,
So not 15 days, not during and
Before.
not 15 days.
Before the
next
session
session.
starts.
Right.
Right. And there can't
so,
there's no civil suits that are allowed during that time either.
Well, so I wonder what happens if they were already involved in a civil suit. It's just on hold.
Apparently.
And what exactly is breach of the peace?
And
A
that would be
DUI
my
could be
only
a breach of the
question.
peace.
It might be, it might be. Or maybe that would be something that you could just, if you're a legislator, you could just have a discussion with the police officer and going, well, let's just, I wasn't hurting anybody. I didn't run over anybody. I didn't cause an accident. So, it's not.
yeah.
Patrick made the point that a DUI is a felony.
Yep.
Mhm.
So that they would be, yeah.
Okay.
So I
Do
just
you
wanted
guys
to
like the definition of breach of the peace?
So
No,
what does
that's-
breach mean? A violation of the peace.
Breach of the peace, the criminal offense of creating a public disturbance or engaging in disorderly conduct particularly by making an unnecessary or distracting noise.
Isn't that what they do in the legislature?
So a breach, and then the notes here say a breach of the peace takes place when either an assault is committed on an individual or a public alarm and excitement is caused. Mere annoyance or insult is not enough. Thus, at common law, a householder could not give a man into custody for violently and persistently ringing his doorbell.
That's not a breach of the peace.
Correct.
So I learned today that there is a House representative in DC from Queens, New York, who has been running a Ponzi scheme and collecting money through a GoFundMe for some veteran excuse. And he's used the money for his campaign. And he's done a series of things and lies as to where he comes from and all kinds of things. And he may not even be a citizen. And so he's under investigation.
Good.
And he's sitting in the House in DC. Can you believe it? And this person made it. He went through he lied the whole way through.
Sorry to say, but yes, I can believe it.
So members of the legislature shall be privileged from arrest in all cases, except treason, felony, and a public disturbance.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense, but okay. So
So
if
they
they,
get some privileges.
well, I can see privileges, but for but public disturbance is accepted, excluded. Interesting. Okay.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Mhm.
And this sort of clause, this section is found in almost all state constitutions related to the legislature.
So what this means is, if I'm understanding it correctly, that if my legislature and I were having an affair, for example, and I broke it off and he was upset and legislature was in session, he came to my house, he was standing in my front yard screaming loudly enough that the neighbors called, he could be arrested for that even while in session.
Yes.
No, it says
Well,
except.
if it's considered a breach of the peace, he
Well, a
could be
public
arrested.
disturbance and disorderly conduct is a breach of the peace.
Right, so he
Right.
can be arrested for that, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
right.
Sabrina, are you looking to go get one and get him yelling and screaming in the front yard?
Well, there's plenty of
That
people
would
in
be a
my
good
area.
strategy. That could be a very good strategy to get Ruben Gallego out of there.
There's a few people in my area that we should have some concern about, right, Lynn?
Yes.
Oh,
Well,
my
now you
goodness.
know what to do. Make sure it's in your constitution first.
I just gotta make sure it's in my front yard.
And somebody else calls is a disturbance to them.
Right.
Oh, my
I'll help
goodness.
you out, Sabrina. I'll come.
Well, you're gonna have to fly. Because by the time you get here, they're gonna be taken care of, trust me.
We'll have a plan.
All right. I just want to make sure
Okay.
you understood that. Moving on.
All right. So who would like to read 7, please?
I'll do it. It's short. 7, freedom of debate. No member of the legislature shall be liable in any civil or criminal prosecution for words spoken in debate.
Okay, so this would be, the implication of this is on the floor, when they're having a debate on the floor in the legislature. Okay. So
Okay,
is-
so you
is
could,
that-
so any threat that you put forth, you wouldn't be,
Mm-mm.
okay.
They can, well, is it like the House floor and the Senate floor where they can lie on the floor and they're exempt from
Well,
being
this
held
says
accountable?
debate. This says debate. And so,
They're in the
so
debate.
if I'm debating you and, I'm on the other side of the aisle and I'm saying things and I say something, it's not true about you. You can't sue me for saying something that's not true
Right.
while we're debating.
Hmm,
Oh,
okay.
Okay, I want to speak to that though. I understand, but when we talk about constitutionally, well, we are reading the Constitution. Okay,
Right.
never mind. I had sunk a little
Okay.
in
We're
terms
back
of
up.
laws. All right, never mind. Sorry.
It's okay. It's interesting, isn't it? So, I mean, you think, oh, well, this is just all dry and unimportant and, and it doesn't apply to my everyday life. But actually, it does.
So Patrick asked in the chat, isn't civil process and common law different?
Probably.
Okay. Section 8, organization, officers, rules of procedure. Each house, when assembled, shall choose its own officers, judge of the election and qualification of its own members, and determine its own rules of procedure.
Right. And this probably is true across the board in all of the states. You're going to have your own Speaker of the House, you're going to have your own President of the Senate, you're going to have the Majority Leader, the Majority Whip, you're going to have the Minority Leader, the Minority Whip, all of these jobs in the House and the Senate, no matter which state you're in.
Mhm.
So that's pretty
Okay.
cut and dried.
Mhm.
In our state, they decided who was going to be the Speaker of the House before the election even occurred.
That's
for-
interesting.
Yeah.
Selected, not elected.
Well, he was already in the House, and he wasn't running for office this year,
Yeah, he was. We had
Oh,
to
was
vote
he?
for him. Yeah. Hmm.
but they already selected him.
I know.
It's just crazy. We
Selected.
don't like him. We don't like him at all. So anyway,
who's that?
Ben Toma.
Ben Toma,
Oh.
he's a rhino.
Well, we quit using that word. We're tired of that word. So we call them Judas Republicans.
Okay, all right, that'll work.
Yeah, that resolution ain't gonna pass. I'm telling you that.
Okay, let's go on to the next slide. And
Way to go, Mitch.
hang on, I'm looking for my phone because I have to keep track of time. All right, so
What
All
time
right.
do you have to go get her?
we need to get off by like 10 to 8 so that I can go get her.
Okay.
Anyway, all right, so quorum, compelling attendance, and adjournment. Who would like to read that one?
I will. The majority of the members of each house shall constitute a quorum to do business, but a smaller number may meet, adjourn from day to day, and compel the attendance of absent members in such manner and under such penalties as each house may prescribe. Neither house shall adjourn for more than 3 days, nor to any place other than that in which it may be sitting without the consent of the other.
Okay, so you'll recall Texas as our example of compelling. Remember?
Yeah, we remember that.
When they flew out of the state.
Yep.
Mhm.
And
How did they compel them? I don't remember.
I don't either. But this is what they're talking about here, that they can compel the attendance of absent members. I
I
don't
think they were
know.
also arrested on their return, weren't
They were.
Mhm.
And then they were taken directly to the house. so
Yeah.
that and then they were made they were made to stay there while decisions were being made.
I presume with no beer.
I would assume with no beer, yeah.
Mm.
So the legal definition of compel, to cause or bring about by force,
Yep.
threat, or
Yes.
overwhelming pressure.
Right. So in the case in Texas, they compelled them by arrest. And so I don't know how often this actually happens, but that's our classic example for this particular section is Texas.
Mhm.
Mm.
All right. So any other questions about this?
Well, I remember that there were many people in DC that were not showing up
Right.
Right.
during COVID, right? And they had the excuse that because of COVID, whatever. So I wonder, is there any kind of rule, statute anywhere that says under, with the exception of, like a public health situation, they can attend via Zoom or like, I don't know.
I don't
There
know
is-
either. I did read this past week that the Republicans in the US House have stated that there won't be any more proxy votes.
Yes.
Yep.
I was
Um,
just gonna bring that up.
They have to be present.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's about time.
I
Yeah.
know. So, and then neither house shall adjourn for more than 3 days, nor to any place other than that which they're sitting without the consent of the other. So if they decide to take a working vacation, they could all go to someplace else where they're all going to fit, apparently, but that's a lot of people that they're going to move around from one place to another if they're going to do that.
Yeah.
Says here that they
So-
can't do that, right?
They don't usually, here in Arizona, I'm not aware that they usually go off to a working vacation someplace.
Not like our teachers
Right.
who think that they can go down to the Bahamas and have a fun time while they let our kids rot.
Yep. So, okay. All right. So the interesting thing here that would maybe we could find some more information about is how other places have compelled attendance. I don't know, because I suspect that something similar to this is in the other state constitutions. What I found with Arizona is because we became a state so late that almost everything that's in our constitution is in somebody else's constitution. They studied all the rest of the constitutions that were in existence and pulled things, not word for word, but the concepts were there, which was smart. I mean, why reinvent the wheel if you don't have to, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so number 10, somebody.
Journal of Proceedings, roll call. Each house shall keep a journal of its proceedings, and at the request of 2 members, the ayes and nays on roll call on any question shall be entered.
Okay, so apparently all of the states keep a journal of the proceedings that occur in the 2 chambers. Okay, this is interesting because one of my observations has been that the legislatures, both in the US and the states, kind of count on people not paying attention,
Oh, absolutely, they do.
right? However, if you haven't paid attention and then you decide that you want to, you can get these journals. They're available. You can read them.
And a lot of the how they voted is in Ballotpedia as well. If you look up your House or Senate people, it will have their voting record listed there for you, and you
Mhm.
can go back and see how they voted on different things that you know, they should have been. And then if you keep track, that's a good way of knowing how they are, you know, they lean, and then also whether they should be reinstated or not, or voted back into office. Because if they're not voting in the way that you want them to vote, then you could address that directly, or then just make sure that they're, you know, you work hard not to have them voted back in.
Right.
So the Republican Liberty Caucus, for the benefit of Lynn, the Republican Liberty Caucus has somebody in Florida. They keep a running tally of that. And they send that information out as to how everybody voted when the session is over.
Ah,
Good,
yes.
good. Okay.
Section
So-
11, disorderly behavior, expulsion of members. Each house may punish its members for disorderly behavior and may, with the concurrence of 2/3 of its members, expel any member.
Oh.
Ooh,
I have to find that one.
looking for loopholes here.
Did we just find a loophole? I
Well,
think-
you might have. So we had a fellow in, I believe it was the House a year or so ago, who had been found to have been, if I'm not mistaken, Rose, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was found guilty of pedophilia. I believe that was what it was. It was something dramatic. And now he chose to just leave, okay, rather than be expelled. But he could have been expelled. It wasn't when he was then, it wasn't occurring while he was in the legislature. It had occurred
Okay.
Before.
And so he chose to just retire.
Spend more time with his family.
Yeah, whatever.
So when they're saying expel here, it's not just, it's more than remove them from the room. This is from office.
From
Right.
office,
Yeah,
correct,
Okay.
that's
correct,
what I would think.
yes.
And I think they can stipulate that they are not allowed to hold any other office than from that point on.
Yes. So it's quite serious.
Yeah, but pedophilia is a crime, so they would have been also arrested, right?
Yes,
Theoretically.
Well,
once they're found out.
and that's if the judge gave them any time or anything.
I don't know.
Mhm.
I just know he chose to quietly go into the midnight. So then there had to be a special election to replace him. But
So
anyway,
was he just accused of pedophilia or was he found guilty?
I don't remember. I just
And
know,
just in this situation here, would you actually have to be found guilty before they, 2/3 vote you, expel you? Or can you just be accused of something like that? And then 2/3 can vote?
so disorderly behavior is a really nebulous term, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, well, let's take Sabrina's example for a second.
I don't know what made me think of that, but
Perhaps if that was happening frequently enough with the same person, maybe they would consider that disorderly behavior that's bringing a black eye on the legislature
Yeah.
and decide that that person could be expelled. It
and they
would-
could, yes, they could, according
Yeah.
to them.
Now, the key here, the problem is a 2/3 vote.
Mhm.
True.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Hmm.
when we have a legislature where the Republicans are only up by one in each
Mhm.
Well,
house.
and they all cover for each other.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, based on this, could they possibly expel that one new gentleman from New York who ran for
Yeah,
Um,
except that they just put him on a committee.
oh, did
Well, there,
I didn't hear that.
yes, there is an ethics committee that is investigating them, and he is going to be found guilty of fraud.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, and so I think the committee can actually, I don't know. We would
Well,
have to look at
you
it
know
very
why they're keeping him, because the margin is so slim.
Yeah.
closely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, okay. Procedures on bills. All right, so let's have somebody read that one.
Section 12, procedures on bills, approval or disapproval by governor. Every bill shall be read by sections on 3 different days, unless in case of emergency, 2/3 of either house deem it expedient to dispense with this rule. The vote on the final passage of any bill or joint resolution shall be taken by ayes and nays on roll call. Every measure, when finally passed, shall be presented to the governor for his approval or disapproval.
Okay. So one of the things that we found, I'm quite sure it's a problem in Florida as well, is that these bills, there's huge numbers of bills coming before the legislature. And some of them are quite long.
Mhm.
And so they don't take the time to do what I bolded here, which is to read the sections on 3 different days.
Well, that's the question I was just going to ask, actually. So
I know that if you look at a bill on the government website for Florida, it does, and you watch the steps that it's gone through, it does mention second reading, third reading.
it does.
It does,
Okay.
but that's the only information that you get. I think I haven't delved into that any deeper. I don't know if there's anything.
I remember seeing something like that in RTS. Yeah, when looking for a bill, it goes through different iterations.
Well, so here's what happens in Arizona. They call a reading of it when it goes into committee. That's a reading.
Okay,
Oh,
It's not read out loud. It's just in the committee. They consider that a reading.
Is it supposed to be read out loud?
Well, that, you know,
depends on our
that's the
constitution, I guess.
implication of this.
Okay.
very
know,
vague.
It is.
That's
And
where
then,
an
and so
error-
now it comes out of committee and it goes to the floor. And they say, let's say House Bill 2335 is up for reading. And so they have, you know, a synopsis of it. And they read the synopsis, but they don't read the whole bill. The bills are not read out loud 3 different times. And we can tell you absolutely that we know that for sure by an experience we had with a bill where they were at the same time. So the same day they voted they voted to pass a bill that outlawed critical race theory. That same day they passed a bill that included allowing SEL in that bill. So they outlawed
Just the
critical
same
race
thing.
theory and passed a bill that allowed SEL on the same day. Now,
Okay.
how they did that was they embedded, does everybody know what SEL is social emotional learning?
Yep.
Yeah,
It's all the sexualization of the children and all of the transgender, all of that stuff is under SEL.
Yep.
All right. So how they did that was they embedded it into a bill that was for mental health. And so they pushed this mental health bill as, we've got to help, our mental health system. There's people who are committing suicide because we don't have a good mental health system. And they pushed it that way. They didn't, they failed to mention that the SEL stuff was in there.
Mhm.
And so they
Nobody
passed
read
it.
it.
The cause of the mental illness.
Yeah, they used it because they were thinking they were classifying social emotional learning as, stress from the COVID and the stress that the kids are feeling, that they need to help them and mentor them and stuff like that. But that's not what they're doing.
Mm-mm. No. So I don't know, I mean, in your legislature in Florida, how they're handling this, but when we confronted a couple of the legislators about this, they're like, what? It's in there? And we're going, yeah, it is.
And they
And you
didn't
just
even know it
passed
because
it.
they didn't read it.
They didn't read it. They didn't know.
Well, I just discovered here in our Constitution that each reading, it shall be read by title only.
Well,
So they
there you
didn't
go.
even have to read the whole bill.
Yeah,
Right.
They're
They
reading the
just read the
title,
title.
yeah.
Well, it's good that they're not strained very much.
right?
Well, and here in Arizona, whatever the title says is what the bill is supposed to be about.
Which is
Well, it
what,
kind of says that too.
Mm.
which is
But
what
we all
section
know that
13
that's,
says.
yeah, that doesn't hold true because they stuff all kinds of crap inside of our bills. And yet if it's not in the title, it's not supposed to be passed.
Right.
There should be a law against that and to limit the length of a bill.
So
Did-
somebody
didn't
read
they do-
section 13.
They did something like that in DC, right? Where
Yeah,
they
Yeah.
did something like that recently where they said you cannot pass something, you have to have 72 hours minimum to read it, and you cannot mix concepts.
Right.
Right.
So
Right.
the one just below it, number 13,
Yep.
addresses that.
read it.
Oh, every act shall embrace but one subject and matters properly connected therewith, which subject shall be expressed in the title. But if any subject shall be embraced in an act which shall not be expressed in the title, such act shall be void, only as to so much thereof as shall not be embraced in the title. So
So-
anything that's not in the title, you need to take it out.
Exactly. But
Right.
do they follow that?
No, therefore, we need to hold them accountable and
That's
And
the
we-
reason why all those statutes need to be removed
right,
for what
Yes.
they've done illegally.
let's find them.
Well, that's what we've been trying to talk
Mm.
about and have
I
people
help
look 'em
you.
up.
How do you find, do you have an app that searches for certain words? How do you locate these bills that are
Well,
not legal?
So the ones that have been passed then become state statute, right?
Yeah, but if they're unconstitutional, they need to be removed.
Exactly. And so in one of the things that we do a lot of work with is with DCS. I don't know if you call it CPS in Florida or
I think we
DCS.
call it CPS, don't we?
Yeah,
Child Protective Services.
yeah. And so in Arizona, it's called Department of Children's Services, DCS. Well, and again, in Arizona, our statutes are put underneath what are called titles. So for instance, Title 16 is our whole criminal code. All the statutes that have to do with crimes or punishments or anything is under Title 16. DCS here in Arizona is under Title 8, where it has to do with children and juveniles and adoption, all kinds of things related to that are under Title 8. I spent one entire weekend reading all of the statutes under Title 8, and 99% of them are unconstitutional.
That's what
90
I was telling.
99% violate Article 2 rights in Arizona. What were you going to say, Sabrina? I'm sorry.
Well, in our group that met today, of which Marianne and Lynn are both part of the group that meets, we meet every Thursday. That's the exact discussion we had today. I told them that most of the ordinances violate statutes, and most of the statutes violate our Constitution.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So this is a massive undertaking, but you got to start someplace.
I
Okay.
would love to help you with
Yeah.
that.
And
You are
so,
more than welcome.
yeah,
Anna, I
I
take
have
all of your help.
I have a personal interest, actually.
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
Because
And
if you could
so-
have those removed, then, we wouldn't have all this garbage inside all these statutes that don't apply to the people.
Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. So you have
Do
to
you
start
know,
someplace.
that they can show up at a school
Mhm.
and interrogate the children without
Yeah.
parents' permission,
Yep.
without any school administrators present?
Yeah.
And they can
Which
remove the
means that
child.
which means they can harass the child and ask questions in such a way to drive certain answers.
Right. And they can remove the child from the school without the parents' knowledge.
And that's before the parents' rights are even removed.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We know.
Believe me, we know.
We know.
And then what do? You take him to court, and by the time this thing is resolved, the kids are lost.
No.
That's the reason why we write the notices we write.
Yeah, but
You're going to lose in a
seriously-
court no matter what.
Well, the
seriously,
thing
I
is that the
just-
courts are not real courts. They're administrative tribunals. They're not court. A court of record has a jury, and the judge is not the one who's deciding things. The judge is a separate magistrate from the jury, and the jury is the one who's deciding things. That's a court of record. That's a real court. The courts that CPS or DCS is using are and traffic court and all of those courts.
They're illegal.
They're legislative tribunals. They're a second judicial system that has been created by the legislature unconstitutionally that functions as a second judicial system separate from the justice system.
And that's the reason why you always want to ask for a trial by jury. You never want to go into any one of those administrative courts and deal with any judge one-on-one.
Yeah, but you don't have an option when they arrest you and take you in front of a judge. What are you
Well,
going to say?
I think you do have an option. I think that's what they're saying
Yep.
here.
It's in the Constitution that everybody is allowed to have a,
What do
you-
you say to the judge if a person is removed from their home because the police officer has a bad day and they decided to, arrest somebody without any cause other than the one that they create in their mind and put on a report? You end up in front of a judge and the judge says you're going to jail.
well, first
Well,
of all, if
excuse
they don't
me?
have a warrant, they better not be showing up at your house.
There is no warrant, but somebody called them and they showed up and they arrested a
You don't have to
person.
let them in. Nope, you don't have to let 'em in.
Well,
You don't.
You
If they
don't.
don't have a warrant,
If they don't have a
then
warrant,
they may not enter your home.
that's right. And if they don't have an affidavit stating who made the accusations or where they have gotten the situation, however, it's been described, if they don't have an affidavit with a warrant, they don't have a full warrant. It's not a real warrant.
no, the police created a report and based on that report, they put the guy in jail. And oh my God, the nightmare that they're going through.
Yeah, well.
And like
that's because
nobody,
people don't know. People
and
don't know.
nobody has pressed charges. They're saying that the charges are pressed by the police. How can they do that?
No.
Yeah, people don't know their rights in your bill or declaration of rights. They don't know their rights. They don't know that they can say no. They don't know these things.
And that's
So
why
how
it's
do we
so
get,
important.
how do
And
we
the
get
police don't know.
right?
Lawyers apparently don't know.
No, the
Oh,
lawyers.
lawyers
don't
don't
Or
know
they want
anything.
the money
The
more
lawyers
than-
are useless.
Yeah,
Useless.
the lawyers
Yeah.
are compliant in all of this, as well as the judges.
Yeah, they are telling these people to go along and to cooperate. So how do we eliminate this unconstitutional second judicial system. Who in the legislature is going to introduce a bill to get rid of that or identify the bill that was approved that is unconstitutional?
Well, you're going to have to find your statute that needs to be changed. The thing is, you're going to have to start someplace. That's the point. You have to start someplace. You have to find a statute or a group of statutes that are unconstitutional. And then you start talking to somebody in your legislature who's willing to listen, who is willing to be a change agent. And so then they start introducing bills to change the statutes. Okay, so for instance, one of the things we've been fighting against is 5G towers. Okay, completely away from anything else. We've been fighting against 5G towers. Nobody's paying any attention because the federal government is paying all the places to put the 5G towers up. Okay, the same as they were paying COVID money for the jab, for the masking, for the quarantining, all of
For
this
the
federal money,
hospitals.
all federal money.
All the schools,
And
the
so,
airports.
yeah. And so, for instance, here in Arizona, now we have a new senator in this one area, in the Tucson area, which is one place that had decided they were going to become a smart city, which is just so stupid. But anyway, they had decided they were going to become a smart city in Tucson because they got paid a whole bunch of money. Well, this senator is now willing to work with the Tucson area people to start writing a bill against 5G. Now, that bill will probably not pass, but at least it's an effort in the right direction. Okay. And so I was just talking with people today about that, and we're going to get this senator the information that she needs so that she can write the bill properly. And we'll see what happens. So it's just one thing. You have to pick something and start. You know, I mean, because it's a massive problem.
It's very massive.
Yes.
It seems like all of this nullifies the Constitution in de facto.
Yeah.
No, it does, because
Yeah.
they put in place things that are not, that go against the Constitution, but also too, a lot of the 3-letter agencies fall under non-positive law. And because they were created without the permission from the people, they don't have the authority in which they deem that they have. So that's the other part of it.
Right. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm really very sorry, but I think that we need to stop here so that we don't start another discussion and then have to stop it in the middle. This hopefully will at least cause you to want to go back and study through your bill or declaration of rights, which probably in Florida is Article 1, and start really reading it. Now, there's lots and lots of words in those declarations of rights that need to be looked up so that you really understand what your rights are clearly. And then if you want to, as we proceed through this next week, we can have a time at the beginning where you can ask some questions about your own declaration of rights.
Actually, the next class will be the 23rd of February, because the 9th we have a prior engagement, because we do this every 2 weeks.
Can I be invited to this again, please?
Of
Oh,
course,
yeah, of
you can come as
course.
often as
Anybody
you
can-
want.
This is
Anybody-
way above me, but the reading law is confusing to me. but I will start and try to learn more.
But
And
Mitch,
Go
don't
ahead.
read the law, read the
yes,
Constitution.
that to me is the law of the land.
Yes, it is.
And
Absolutely.
one of my big things is the oath they take to uphold.
Absolutely.
So if all of this stuff you're talking about is they're writing laws that are unconstitutional, isn't that a violation of their oath?
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
Absolutely.
100%.
And that's where I want to go, because I want to
Yep.
go in there, and the violation of oath is imprisonment, removal from office, and fine. I
Yep.
want all three.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
We're right there with you.
So
And
Please.
can't run for office again. Isn't that part of it?
Yep. Yep.
Mhm.
and I think for me, that's the great starting point, because if we could get, when we remove a couple of them for violating their oath,
Mhm.
Yes.
the rest of them are going to be like, oh shit.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
sorry for my French, but
No.
I am over this.
No.
Yeah.
True. Very
No,
true.
I'm glad that you're benefiting from it.
Mhm.
And you absolutely are welcome to all of them. Rosemary has posted the previous ones. We spent 11 Zoom meetings, I think it was 11, on just Article 2 in Arizona, which is the Bill of Rights. 11.
So I have a list here that you posted.
Yep.
It says, here you go. This will be the links for all of the new Affidavit Mama's Bill of Rights videos.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that was that one. It was a whole series that we did just on Article 2.
Okay, so if we were to separately, since we won't see you guys for months, separately start working on these, are these about the Constitution?
Yes, in
These
Arizona.
are
but-
about for the Bill of Rights in Arizona, but we did do for the very first ones we did were all on the US Constitution. I can give you all of those links and you can go back in there and start watching those. And we went through everything in that one as well. So if you want that
Okay.
one, I can go ahead and put that together and lay that out for you so you can go back through those.
Yeah,
Are they on
you-
your website?
Yeah, if you
Yes.
have that on your website, you wouldn't have to you wouldn't have to be distributing that over and over, because I know you just did that for me on Telegram,
Yeah.
but now you would have to do it again for this.
It's okay. The
request.
Constitution, it's fine. I can list them both because it's listed both in Rumble and on YouTube. So I can put in the US Constitution so that you can go, and I put them in order. So you'll go from the very first time we started and it will go all the way down. And I think we had 10 of those. So there's 10 classes of
Yeah.
those.
yeah.
And
Hey,
you'll send this
so-
to me through my email?
Yeah, I can do it that way, or Sabrina can give you the link if you
Okay,
guys
yeah.
have a, so
And
yeah,
You can go through those just on your own separately,
at any point in
Right.
time, they're there.
right?
Yeah, but I think we should probably, Mitch and Lynn and Marianne and whoever else wants to do it, we should probably do it as a group so that we all stay motivated.
Right. Well, and you can talk about it then and ask each other questions and
Mhm.
think about, think about how that applies to your situation. Because we went, there's Zooms and we talked about them, we thought about them and discussed them. We didn't just read them,
Right.
And you
like what
can
we're doing tonight.
Yeah, and that way you can stop them and start them whenever you want.
Okay?
Hey,
I've
All
got
right.
to go. You guys can stay on and talk for a few more minutes, but I've got to go.
I just have a quick
Thank you,
question.
Deborah.
I thought the Bill of Rights was a separate document outside the Constitution, but now I'm hearing that it's part of the Constitution.
Yeah, let me stop this.
I'm going to
one.
leave, Rosemary,
That's okay.
you can answer that, okay?
Okay, let
Okay,
me.
bye, guys.
so
Right,
Thank
thank
you.
you,
Here,
Deborah.
Still got it
Mhm.
up. Let me pull it up here. Just give me 1 second. Okay. I went to Virginia, but let me close out of that one and I will pull up just the Arizona one. Just since
Oh.
that's where we've been. And that's what those other ones are.
I have one question for you because this came up in our conversations today.
Okay.
Article 4, Section 2, which we talked about at the very beginning, where it says the sections of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states.
Right.
There was a conversation, partly that the stuff that followed regarding crimes was what they were referring to. Can you expound on that a little bit? Because I know what I said, I just don't think everybody believed me.
Okay. Go back and read it to me one more time.
Article 4, Section 2, the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states.
Okay, so what it's saying is, way back, okay, when everybody first came here, the 13 colonies had their constitutions first. So each one of the 13 started their constitutions. Then the United States came together and made the Constitution. So all of our constitutions that we have in each state came from the original 13, not from the US. That's totally separate. So each one of our states started and pulled, like Deborah said, different parts from all those other 13, the original 13 colonies. They said, oh, I like this one and we like that one. And that's how each state made their own constitution. So that is why every single state can use somebody else's constitution, because they apply to all the people. It doesn't say only the people of Washington or only the people of Virginia. It says all the people. And by that, that means when we write our notices or our affidavits, or we cite something from a constitution, we can pull it from any one of the 50 states. So that's what Deborah meant by you can use something from I can use something from Florida. We can use something from Vermont, because it applies to everybody in the United States, not just the state. Does that make sense?
So if Florida outlaws Lucky Strike cigarettes
Mhm.
and Georgia doesn't, we're going to pretend those are laws. I should be able to get Lucky Strike cigarettes because they're available to me in Georgia.
Well, you're talking
Maybe
about
not a
something,
product. I guess.
yeah, but you're talking about something that's not constitutional.
That's commerce.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, let me find a different example then.
It would be guns. You can say guns. If
Guns or
let's say
active
California
law.
outlaws guns, you can use PA state and say shall not question.
Right.
Okay, that I
Yeah.
can. That's a better. Thank you. That's a better example.
And
Yeah.
that's the other reason why when we were having all these problems about gun laws, okay, you can't take the right of somebody to have and own a gun. It is a constitutional right. So when we set forth notices and affidavits to the Supreme Court from Arizona, we sent them notices letting them know that they needed to rule properly on the things that were going on in New York, in California, and Hawaii. And the Supreme Court came out with the fact that anybody is allowed to have a gun, whether the numbers are filed off, whether it's a ghost gun, any kind of gun. You cannot take that right away. That applies to everybody in the United States. That doesn't mean that only certain people like Texas or Arizona can carry, but nobody else can.
So what about this brace thing they're trying to do in a bunch of the states? If it has a brace, a gun with a brace, Patrick, do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
Yes.
okay. That, yeah.
Bump stop. Stock.
A bump. Thank you. A bump
Bump
stop.
stock, yeah.
So those, they cannot actually really go take those guns.
Mm-mm.
No, see, but you have to know your rights and the Constitution to fight with them.
Yeah.
That's what, like, if you guys look inside chat, it says maximum 77D.
I
Everyone
saw that.
may renounce or relinquish a right introduced to his own benefit. Like, I think Anna was saying something about like the police come into your house. If you have ignorance of it, then you
Mhm.
can waive it. And when you talk to the lawyers, they tell you, oh, go in front of the judge. You don't need a jury. So if you don't ask for it, then you can just waive it, and then that's how they get around circumventing.
And they play on your ignorance of
Yeah,
not
exactly, yeah.
knowing your constitutional rights.
Yep,
And that's how
100%.
they get away with it.
Mhm.
Because
I-
once you accept going to that court that is not a court of record, you are acquiescing to their set of rules.
It's not even 100% that. If you give them an affidavit of the law, right? Because affidavits stand as truth in the matter in commerce. They're in commerce. So if you would give them the sworn affidavit of this is my rights, and if you read the Maxims of Law by Charles Weissman, they can't argue with you. You don't even have to even say it, and your lawyer doesn't have to say it. You just have to deliver it to them, and then they're like, "Oh shit," you know.
Mhm.
Who is that author?
Charles
I
A.
got it.
Weissman. I would
I-
suggest reading the book,
I
and
got
I
it.
have a highlighter,
Yeah.
and I went back